How's everybody doing today? Get all the buttons.
Still alive.
Still alive. Yes, we are. Still alive and loving it, right? That's what we like. So, Friday has arrived. It is time for. You ready? Are you ready?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Oh, you've got a glass today. Well, here, I'll make the sounds here. Okay. If you haven't done that yet today, you should go ahead and do that. Mine, of course, is my standard Coke Zero. And for today's lunch, we are serving pot pie. But today's conversation, if you haven't listened to this week's episode about chaos engineering, you should. We talked with Russ and Sylvan. Oh, man, I keep messing his name up. If you guys are watching, I'm sorry.
With Russ and a French guy.
And if you haven't listened to it yet, it's funny to hear Sylvan talk about his last name even. So it's pretty good. But one of the things that they brought up in that episode was the concept of a game day. And one of the stories that Russ told is he went to see a client and they said, yeah, we did chaos. And he says, okay, great. That's great. You did it, but are you still doing it? And the concept of a game day is sort of the same thing. Why would you bother practice, play one game, and then retire? Right? That makes no sense. So when the concept of game day is, hey, there's seasons, right? If you're playing football, whether it's the American kind or the non-American kind, there's seasons. It doesn't mean you're playing all 52 weeks of the year. There's some off season. But even during that off season, there's people maintaining and preparing for the next season. And that applies directly to what we do today. Agree or disagree?
But it's in a stark contrast of having project managers. Because, in the nature of a project manager is to have a project that has a beginning and the end.
Right. And that's the season, right? That's a season. If you want to equate it to sports.
Yes, but that would be, if you would make a parallel with sports, that would mean that, yeah, we have one season where we are playing American football, and the next season we are playing baseball. That would be equivalent to projects in IT companies, right?
Yeah. Right, and hopefully not with the same team.
And hopefully not with the same team, exactly. So I don't think that there's equivalent. And actually, when you think about it, that's why it makes so much more sense to call a coach than a project manager.
Yeah. But, okay, so we talked about the whole end-to-end thing for a minute, but let's talk about game day. Why is it important to actually practice and then execute on what you've practiced? Right? This is true for chaos, right? It's like you don't just do chaos once. The only reason you would do chaos once is if you put your application in, you ran chaos on it, and then you shut your application down. Right?
Because deep down, we don't want to find out how mistaken we are. I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
How often have you been in a company that says, yeah, we have multiple clusters. One is active, passive, replication. No disaster could ever affect us. How often did you hear that? And how often they would allow you to shut down one of those data centers?
I think the response would be something like this.
Son of a biscuit eater.
Exactly. So what we're doing, I don't mean we, but industry is that we are designing things. And many of those things are just in case if it ever happens, and we're going to find out what will happen when it happens, right? And deep down, we know that it will fail, and that's why we don't allow anybody to touch that until then. That's my theory.
But that's sad. Actually,
That's sad. Of course it's sad.
It's worse than sad. It's
Of
irresponsible.
course.
Right?
Of course. But isn't that human nature? I mean, I could bring that to, let me think about it. Let's say, how do you call that? Ecology, not ecology, the natural disasters things, type of stuff, right?
Okay.
I mean, you don't want to reduce CO2 emissions because that might happen one day. I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about what will happen today, right? It's kind of human nature. We are not capable of, most of us are not capable of planning for the future.
Right.
And this is one of those things. We are actually planning for the future with disaster recovery, but we are uncomfortable with the results, I think, to allow anybody to do a game day or something like that.
But why would you hire a team to do something if you're not willing to actually play the game? I'm asking
Why?
questions today, right?
I don't know why. I mean, most of the things we do is irrational.
Okay, so this is where you could bring in your archaeology knowledge. What did the Egyptians do? Did they, okay, let's ignore that aliens built the pyramids, but did the Egyptians, when they were building the pyramids, not have a plan and execute on the plan?
Yeah, but you didn't know whether a pyramid is okay or not until you build it.
Okay, so you're building it. Are you saying there were no problems during the building of the pyramid?
So it's not that we don't, as going back to us as industry, it's not that we don't have a plan. The problem is that we do have a plan and we do execute on that plan. We have most companies have a plan, disaster recovery, this and that, and we do execute. We create separate data centers, we do this, we do that, we do a bunch of things.
Mm-hmm.
We are just not reproducing the situation for which we are preparing for, right? So in a real world, in some other context, that would be kind of, imagine if we would be able to simulate, to reproduce tornadoes, right? Would we generate tornado in on a city to prove that it is built to withstand it? I mean, I would say we should, but in reality,
right. But this goes back to which it was the worst Indiana Jones movie. It was the one that had Shia LaBeouf in it. Right?
Which one is worse? I don't know. First one?
No, it was the last one. The first one is canon.
No, the first one is the worst because Indiana Jones did not do a single thing that affected the flow of the movie.
Well, that's true.
I learned it from Big Bang Theory.
Yes, I did too. Thank you, Amy Farrah Fowler, for that great knowledge. It's the one to where he gets dropped into, he wakes up and he's in like the Los Alamos area where they're doing nuclear testing on a city. Right? You would have to have we're going to go back to our real example. You'd have to have a city of great scale and drop a tornado on it. I mean, like some of the insurance companies have the hurricane simulation rooms. They have houses, they have, so they can test shingles and all the other things that come to that. But, that's still practice. Game day is the Red Cross showing up when there's been a disaster. Right? I don't think in our planning we don't have a Red Cross as part of our plans.
We don't.
Why is that?
Because it's too risky. I think that's the real answer. Forgetting what I was half jokingly saying before, it's simply too risky. The cost of a potential destruction on production is too high for companies that are not ready for something like that. I think that's the real answer.
But if you're not,
because if you do find out that something, so let me put you in this scenario.
Okay.
Option number one,
Mhm.
prepare for it, prove that it works on theoretical level, and then wait until it happens for real, right? And if things go wrong, there will be a considerable cost.
Mhm.
Or do it as a game day. But then you need to be prepared to pay that cost.
Right.
Because if you're not doing it in production, it doesn't count, really. Doesn't.
It doesn't count. Yeah. Let me fix something here real quick. And turn myself up a little bit more. Maybe a little bit more. Is that better? Let's see. Let's try that. That's probably.
Yes, I cannot.
That's too much.
I cannot hear me. I cannot compare.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, there we go. If you're here from the great debacle from last week to where the microphone died at the end, I still hadn't tested it fully out until I just walked in and realized I hadn't put the battery in. So hopefully that's better. Thanks for the heads up, Andre. So how do we convince people that, I mean, we understand risk is bad. We're risk averse people. I'm risk averse. But I also don't want to be woken up in the middle of the night when I actually get to take a vacation and I have to deal with something.
Yes.
So how do we trade that off? I mean, what is it that we do in order to make that?
I mean, I was exaggerating, to be honest, before. Game day is not really about reproducing the disaster situation from the first attempt. That's not the point. If you now move to the serious side, it's about slowly going towards reproducing the real huge disaster, right? I don't know. If I limit myself to networking, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not shut down the networking of the whole cluster, but of one node, see what happens.
Exactly.
So it's about really slowly increasing the chaos or random stuff happening and slowly increasing the confidence. And one day you might be able to shut down the whole data center, right?
Yeah.
But for you to reach that point, you need to go through certain steps, right?
through the steps.
From nothing to something.
Yeah.
Then it does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's putting the frog in a non-boiling pot of water first and slowly turn up the heat. It's the same thing, just one thing. Okay, have we reproduced that? It's a continuum, right? You can't skip the continuum. You still have to go through the continuum. It's your decision of how fast to go through that continuum. But you still have to go through those parts, even if it's just a checkbox, maybe.
To be fair, that does make a lot of sense with existing systems that were not actually taking those things in account. In an ideal situation, you would be, in an ideal situation, let's say starting from scratch, your system initially is this, and then it's this, and then it's this, and then it, grows. And as it grows, your system grows, your test coverage grows. I mean, not test coverage, test coverage should be the same, but the number of tests grows, the number of processes, the number of applications, and among other things, the scope of the forced chaos or intentional chaos that you're doing. So you would be always, in a ideal situation, you would be always, let's say, have a game day once a month, whatever, and you would be stressing the whole system, but in that ideal situation, your whole system initially is small. So it is increasing organically.
So why do businesses not put chaos engineering at the same level and the same planning level as software engineering?
Couple of reasons. First, because Gardner, as far as I know, didn't say it yet. So until Gardner says
chaos matters.
You do it, you don't do it.
Oh wait, I have an answer for that. That.
There you go. Exactly. So big companies follow what Gardner says, or when I say Gardner, I mean Gardners of the world. There are other agencies similar, right? That's the first reason. It's a relatively new practice. It's not that nobody was doing it years ago, but it's still new, right? So it's under the radar to begin with. Now, what I'm saying is a bit contradictory, because chaos as a thing, as a concept, is new. Now, testing your hypothesis, that's not new. so that exists long before first computer.
Testing. Okay, so we're assuming people actually test their systems.
Yes, and they don't.
And they don't. Wait, I have an answer for that. So, anyway. So one is Gartner, Forrester, or any of the other magazines. Excuse me, not magazines, research companies. I did not mean that as a slight, so forgive me. They say it's not important to them, so it's not important to companies. What's number two?
Not necessarily not important for them, but it's not in the radar.
It's not on the radar yet.
Exactly.
There's not an up and to the right.
And you need to have some medium player, not to say big player, for something to get into the radar, right? A bunch of open source projects will not do it, and a bunch of hacks for Netflix will also not do it. That's so the industry needs to evolve, or have a bigger player in the area.
Right.
Yeah, I said, but there's more than one. I forgot now. What are the others?
So why don't people put chaos engineering at the same level as software engineering? If I have a greenfield, okay, you're the project manager, you're the product owner. You're the product owner.
I am the product owner. I'm the product manager.
Okay, product manager. And then you have been giving a new project, greenfield, all new infrastructure, all new everything. Would you prioritize chaos engineering from day one?
It's not about prioritizing. It's about being an integral part of it. That would be the same question. Would you prioritize testing? No, I would never prioritize testing. Testing is simply part of that. Prioritizing indirectly means putting something in front of something else. And that,
right.
If you literally mean that, then I would say, yes, I would not prioritize chaos. But practice it, yes.
Okay. So, and that's the reason why I said the word that way, because then you would answer in priorities. Priorities have a meaning, right? They're 1, 2, 3. There's a priority there. What we're saying is get away from priorities and just make it all bullets. They're equally the same, or they should be equally the same, right?
Yeah.
It's just like testing. Testing is not better or worse than developing the software. It's just what it is.
But realistically, chaos is testing. I would say that it could. You would rather call it maybe subset of testing. Yes. Just like performance testing would be subset of testing as a big umbrella, right? And the point is that you're trying to do something, and then you want to validate that something is really true. And that something can be, I want to accomplish 1 million users per second. I'm inventing now, right? And then load testing is the tool you do that, right? I want to make sure that my system is highly available. That's chaos testing, right? Because you need to. Most systems are highly available when they're in ideal state.
Right. And what is steady state? If you haven't taken the course yet, go buy the course. I need to put a link up for that. But I don't have one. So what is steady state? What is true steady state?
So steady state hypothesis, the idea is that you define a state, and they call it steady because it's supposed to be the same before and after some actions, right? So if I say my application is, if my steady state hypothesis would be my application is reachable through network, then I validate that hypothesis at the beginning. Yeah, it's reachable. Then I do some actions like maybe cut off networking, right? Or do something. And then I validate it again. And it's called steady simply because it's a hypothesis that is supposed to be the same no matter the oscillation in the rest of the system. So if the system is dynamic, the hypothesis about how it should behave is steady.
So you're saying
or static.
So once the first step in that hypothesis runs and it's positive, and that from that point forward, all the others should be positive as well.
I mean, not all
in
the
a
others,
steady
the same. So the state should be the same before and after.
Yes. Okay. Oh, but not in between. Are you saying that?
I mean, in between as well, if you want to,
Okay.
if you want to go that. I mean, but usually we're focusing on kind of state, action, or multiple actions, and then state again. So I might go crazy and say my application is reachable, and then not only cut off traffic, but maybe shut down a replica of my application, right?
Right.
So I can do multiple actions, and then I say, okay, is it still highly available? You could theoretically do it in between as well.
Okay.
But then it would be more like multiple experiments.
So, all right, and that's what I was going to ask is how would you classify that? If you're doing it in between each one of those, that would be multiple, but would it be better just to break them out into single logical units of work?
Yeah, yes, as well. I mean, I would probably by default keep it separate, and then because if you're realistically doing in between, then it's kind of like, then it's two flows,
Yeah. Well, this is...
You can execute them one after another. Realistically, those are the two experiments that you execute one after another.
Right. Maz has a question here.
What is the difference between chaos engineering and configuration validation? Good question. So I'm not familiar with the term configuration validation, so I might misunderstand. Maybe I misunderstood the question, but configuration
Okay, go ahead and define configuration validation because I have an idea too of what that means.
I'm inventing now because I haven't heard the term, so let me invent. I would assume that it is referring that that you're validating that the configuration you set for something, when applied, is really that something.
Yeah,
right?
That's the way I would interpret it as well.
I'm guessing really, but if my configuration have 3 nodes, I apply that configuration, and voila, I have 3 nodes, or I don't. Right? Or the port is open, or whatever the configuration is. If I'm guessing right, and I think that you Darren, are guessing the same, so we might be right.
Yeah.
Then chaos is more about, so while configuration validation is validating whether when something is applied really creates that something or converges that something. Chaos is more about when I introduce unknown effect. I mean, it's not unknown, it's known because I'm obviously introducing it. But when I introduce some side effect, whether that same configuration, let's say, is still valid, right? So the second configuration validation would be when I apply, I want 3 nodes, do I get 3 nodes? And chaos would be when I destroy 1 node, do I still have 3 nodes?
Right. So so to me, configuration validation is just that. It's like, I said I want X, do I have X? And that's it. It's whether it's I applied this YAML file, or excuse me, I ran this chef recipe. Is the output of the recipe the same as what I expect? Right.
Yeah.
But it's not actually going in and causing potential issues that, going back to Victor's case of, or maybe it's simple. Let's go old school for a minute, since I'm old. And I've got a load balancer and 2 app nodes behind it, and I'm testing the front side of the load balancer. I kill off a node. Is my app still accessible? That's chaos at a very simplistic term. In fact, that's sort of the chaos monkey level of chaos, right? Just killing off a VM. And is it still accessible? What we found with Chaos Toolkit, and especially inside of Kubernetes, it gets a lot more interesting because of service meshes and other strange things.
I think that the interesting part, and I would say that Kubernetes is maybe a culmination of that interesting part that is started long ago, and that is that we are moving away from hardware, right? So if I would go back to my young days, networking would mean literally putting cables here and there. That's what networking would mean, right?
Yes.
If you want to connect A with B, you put a cable between A and B, and it's connected, right? That's networking. Not literally, there are switches in between and all this stuff, but it was physical. Now we're moving into, we are already mostly now software-based, which I'm going to ignore now discussion about how software-based is better than hardware-based or what's not. But from the point of view of experimentations, that allows us to do things that we couldn't do before without a considerable human effort. Because if I now tell you, if all your networking is about cables and you cannot create network outages on software level, then you would need to start running from all over the place and then taking things out and in, right? That's very, very expensive. People are expensive.
Really? People are more expensive than software?
Depends how expensive people are.
Wait. Here we go.
Awesome!
So
within a few episodes, you will have it so well memorized that it will be instant.
Yeah, it'll be just, I'll think it and it'll come on. I need to put it in front of me anyway. So and Maz followed up, and I think what Maz's comment here is similar to what we were saying.
Partly. I did it
except for that last part of it, that last preposition with your
not
company's
only that,
requirements.
It's not about only being configured consistently, right?
Yeah.
I can have my whole cluster configured consistently and still my application is not being reachable. I can do that. That's not. It's not really hard. I can have bottlenecks somewhere in networking. I'm just sticking with the same subject, and from network is still configured consistently. It's just as good as it was today as it was yesterday from configuration perspective. But there is a bottleneck, right? Caused by me simulating too many requests or many different reasons.
And bottlenecks are probably worse than just killing things off, because you're going to get more strange transients than you would just shutting something off.
And there are different people, like anything else, approach things from different angles, and I'm definitely not an expert like guys from Chaos Toolkit, but I like to approach it from user experience perspective, right? So we do actions on technical level, but most of validations or hypotheses should be from user perspective, because really what I care is whether users are having the consistent and good experience when bad things happen.
Right, because users
I don't really care whether network is down or not. That's not the point of my validations. My validations, where can I access the application?
Right.
If there is some magic involved and network is down and I can still access it, oh, great. So what? Perfect.
So when we're in Moz, sort of like, people are always more expensive, which is true.
Not necessarily.
Oh, I disagree. You go ahead.
I mean, if you go out of software, sometimes people can be producing things, working for cents an hour and producing things
Like a
cheaper
sweatshop?
than a factory, like sweatshop, for example.
Okay.
People should be more expensive always. I completely agree. If we would rephrase it like that. Unfortunately, that's not always the case.
Let's without saying the words that are happening right now, for anybody that has children that have had to stay at home because they could not go to school, teachers are worth a lot more than they're being paid. I would say that's probably a great understatement, right?
Absolutely. And this is now completely unrelated, but
it's okay.
and I heard that sentence from similar sentence or meaning from a couple of other people, and it's kind of sad that we need a
Something to
disaster
happen.
like this one to realize the importance of education. But that's I'm
what it is.
digressing. I'm going into completely different subjects now.
No, okay. Let's take this as a real without saying all the words. Chaos was injected into our society. Right?
Exactly. And what will be happening in some, not all, but some countries, and what is already happening in what was happening before Corona. Actually, the reason why Asia is dealing so much better on average than the rest of the world with Corona is because those things were happening more frequently there. Mm-hmm. They're better prepared, and they've been practicing those scenarios or closer to those scenarios before it happened.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's one thing. I heard a gentleman that I listened to on a podcast. He said, I sort of used to laugh inside, not externally, but laugh inside when I would see people that were in Japan or some other place in APAC wearing masks all the time. And because it's like, oh, why bother? Now, I've been to Manila before Manila was, when was that? The late 80s, early 90s. And you had to wear bandanas because the pollution was so bad. Otherwise, you weren't going to breathe. This is just a variation of pollution. But where I was trying to get...
In a way, yes.
Yeah. But where I was trying to get with this is we've had a global scenario occur to where chaos was injected. Some things worked okay. Some things completely shut down. Some things have stayed par for the course. So how do we bring that inside of our four walls for our business? If you're not willing to practice, so if you listen to most governments now, and this isn't about a political rant, but most governments are like, this isn't going to happen to us again. We're going to be prepared we're going to have N95 masks. We're going to have extra ventilators, at least maybe centrally for a region, right? These kinds of preparations that until you go through a chaotic event, you don't know what you don't know.
But the real question, sticking with Corona subject, what will happen, this is my prediction, right? Some countries, and that will be probably minority, will make long-lasting measures after this ends, and will be working continuously on, let's say, game days, right?
Yes.
But that will be minority. For majority of the world, this whole period will be forgotten in less than 2 years. That's my prediction.
Yeah, and I think,
and you will prioritize, I don't know, having more money in a pocket or something, whatever, over that. I mean, not you, but the world
right.
in general, most of the world.
Well, I can guarantee you, I'm going to have more money in some buckets, like liquid cash. But all right. So let's get back to more real. I was just trying to draw some parallels there because we have seen parallels in our scenarios that have happened globally recently.
But it's a good parallel, even though I don't think you articulated well. It's not
I did.
Chaos is injected now. I think that chaos just happened, right?
Yes.
And what is the difference between small number of countries and vast majority is that small number of countries had the equivalent of a game day, was practicing for those scenarios, while majority of us did not.
Right.
Including me. I mean, in the country I live in, right? So I'm not kind of, and we're in a very bad state. Very, very bad state.
Yeah.
And the real question now, what comes now to somebody to calculate is whether those that were practicing are better off in total than those who didn't. Because practicing costs money as well.
Yes.
And
it
it's a
does.
disruption as well.
Yes. And if it's only for a one-time event, was it worth it? That goes back to the earlier thing. If I've practiced and practiced, I only play one game, was it worth it? I don't know.
But man, I was listening to Bill Gates. It's a person I really hated, and now I really love because I think he's amazing. Now he's not head of Microsoft. He and quite a few other people were saying, "Yeah, this is gonna happen. It's inevitable. Like, we all know it's gonna happen."
Well, and this isn't the first time. If you go back to 1918, there was the flu, right? Before there was a flu vaccine.
Spanish
right?
flu, right?
The Spanish flu. So it's these things have happened throughout the centuries. This isn't anything new. It's just this happens to be our generation's version of that. Ish. Right?
It's a good example because if we ignore everything else, let's say coronavirus and flu, then you might be thinking, let's say that those are the only two that exist, you might be thinking, maybe I'm lucky. Maybe in my generation it will not happen and I can focus on value.
Yeah.
Because quite a few people lived in between.
Right.
And this is, I think, now going back to chaos and game days and stuff like that, I think that's the essence, is that many people are not going to invest into generating chaos because they're hoping that chaos will not happen naturally during their project. And then it will be somebody else's problem. That is the real issue, I think.
And there's nothing we can do about that. Right?
Nothing.
There's nothing.
I mean, let's say that most of us, including us, me, we're very focused on quarters, maybe year.
Yeah.
Right? I need to generate certain objectives within a quarter.
Yeah.
And then I need to start thinking, is the expense of simulating a disaster really going to help me in my quarter? I sound like I'm against. I'm actually fully in favor of all that. But I'm just trying to articulate how difficult it might be to make those decisions considering your objectives.
Yeah. It's should you try to okay, let's go back to this. If you're building out a project today and you're not planning for any disaster recovery from day one, that's bad. That's beyond bad. If you're not doing chaos on top of that, then that's a choice. Right? In fact, the other is a choice as well, but you're setting yourself up beyond failure. Case in point of, I've got a single EC2 instance and it's running in East 1A, and that's the only thing I have. Right? Now, I know many people that do that, and everything has, in general, been fine. So that's the risk that they were willing. It's like, I don't need multi-AZ. I don't need anything else. I'm okay. Until that one day, you shake it out, you fix it, and you move on. There's a cost benefit that has to be done to this. But if I'm running at global scale, like I'm not talking, tens of thousands of requests a day. I'm talking millions or billions requests a day. I think there's probably some inflection point to where chaos has to become a requirement.
Or being a requirement for others. So I like that you mentioned EC, was it EC2 you said? Yeah, EC2, right?
Yeah.
So, and bear in mind that what I'm going to say does not mean I'm fully aware that bad things happen everywhere, including cloud.
Hang on. Here it goes. Here we go. Get ready for this.
At this time, I'm going to ask that you fasten your seatbelts.
Okay. Here we go.
So this is one of the many advantages I believe cloud brings us, because there's tens or hundreds or thousands of highly skilled people thinking about those things, right? And making those decisions, and many of those decisions are about what will happen when bad things happen, right? And creating zones within a region that we can, so that we can have a regional cluster, and then a bunch of other things. Now, I am fully aware that being in AWS or Azure or Google does not mean that bad things will not happen. I'm old enough to know that that's not the case. But the chances of those things happening are so much lower than if you do it yourself, unless you invest considerable effort. Probably much more effort than you should invest. So if anybody is kind of thinking, oh, on-prem or cloud, hey, that's one of the reasons. They give you all the... So let's say, going back to our personal experiences, right? I don't know whether you experienced that or no. I spoke with a lot of companies last couple of years about Kubernetes, and I say, hey, if you want highly available and all those things, you need to have 3 data centers, right? That's what you absolutely have to have, right?
Yep.
And most of them answer with, no, 2 is what I have. And we are talking about big guys, right? Still, 2 data centers in one region. That's more than what most have, right? Yep. And simply, you building a 3rd data center yourself is insane.
Yeah,
it's insane.
And people ask. So let's pause there for just a second. Some people may be asking right now as they're listening or watching this again. Well, 2 seems like it's a fine thing. 2 words: split brain.
Yeah.
Because if you did the right thing and you were running your application across multiple data centers at once, and you lost connectivity between the 2, who wins? Again, assuming stateful for a moment.
And that's why traditionally big companies are not really having highly available systems. They're having 2 data centers, and one is sitting and literally wasting millions of dollars a year for doing absolutely nothing, because the only thing we can do is shift everything there one day if it ever happens.
Yeah.
So kind of like we're going to have a downtime of half a day.
Why? I mean, that's just disaster recovery. That goes back to the scenario I was talking about before. It's just disaster recovery.
It's a disaster recovery.
Now, I have had some people that go that way, to where it's like, when we have a problem, we'll do it. Or maybe we'll exercise it once a year.
But the thing is that disaster recovery is a concept, and this is now related with chaos. It's great improvement compared to not having it.
Yes.
But given that you have now high availability as alternative to that, with 3 data centers in the same region, why would they go with disaster recovery? I mean, you should have a disaster recovery and stuff like that. Yeah. But why should they go with active passive when I can have 3 actives?
Exactly. Now, the problem, and this plays out in all of the major cloud providers, is most people don't create their applications to be able to run multi-region. That's a much harder problem to solve. It's just not even, but some people I've talked to, it's like, oh yeah, we're going multi-region right out of the gate. I went, so have you run in the cloud yet before? No. Okay, this goes back to the continuum I was talking about earlier. You need to start in one AZ and then do multi-AZ. Make sure you get that golden first, because the chances of an AZ going down in a region is pretty small. Actually, yeah, pretty small. The chances of a region going completely down is pretty small in general. Talk about a waste of money. If you're going to try to do multi-region out of the gate,
I mean, I would go for multi-region if that would be a problem that is solved by the industry, but it's not.
Yes.
So, and then when I hear, if I'm interpreting your words right, when I hear people saying, I'm going to jump over what is working well and is infinitely better than what I have and go straight into what is not a solved problem. It's just silly. It's just stupid.
So Moz brought up something that aligns with this.
Yes.
Except it's not going to be that low, though. I think we've talked about this before. Is people aren't the problem with Kubernetes is people know that the Kubernetes is there. What we don't want to talk about, and this gets back to the Heroku model that I've harped about for a long time now. Heroku is great. In fact, the company that we work for used to have a platform as a service as well. I was like, I need 3 of them. Make it so. Right? That's where Kubernetes has to get to first, or a layer above Kubernetes has to get to. Here's my app.
Yes.
Make sure I've got it running highly available in this region, or make sure it's highly available across these regions.
Yes.
I don't want to be the one to write that.
And if I would be nitpicking now, it's not really that we will not be using cloud instances. We will. It's just that now we're adding a abstraction level on top. We are using Kubernetes as an operating system for the whole cluster. That's my best description. So it's not that we are not using it. We are.
Yeah.
It's just we don't care about it anymore.
Right. And I liked what you just said there. And we haven't talked, we've talked about Kubernetes as the operating system before, but it didn't hit me until you just said it right then. It's just an operating system.
It is.
So just like today, it isn't a great thing to log into SSH into a Linux box and make changes to a box. We shouldn't be logging into a Kubernetes cluster and making changes to the Kubernetes cluster.
So think about it. What does an operating system do, right?
Yeah.
And in my simple head, the job of operating system is to make sure that the processes across the server are working well, right?
Yep.
What goes to this CPU, what goes to that CPU, what part of memory is taken for this process. Basically, it is ensuring that processes on a server are running.
Yep.
Right? Simplified version of that. And if you now think about what Kubernetes does, it is doing exactly the same thing, except that it is doing it on a level of the cluster, of a collection of nodes, which we call a cluster. It's doing exactly the same job as an operating system or traditional operating system, just it's not tied to a single server, single hardware.
Yep. And what we're missing today is that abstraction layer on top to make that simpler. Because
I feel like it.
Yeah, because like, okay, let's play this out. Helm is effectively RPM.
Yeah.
It's just a package manager, right? Yeah. So we're starting to get there, right? All the pieces are getting in place now to where, again, going back to my continuum, right? We're having to go through all these things again and again and again till eventually it's going to be, do you remember 4GL development languages?
4GL?
4GL.
I have no idea.
It was, yeah. We got to get Andy on too for the no-code stuff. It's fine. Think Power Builder, right? It was point and click, right click, add the thing, blah, blah, blah. Power Builder wasn't a 4GL, it was a 3GL. Again, I'm saying words that I don't even remember the definitions of anymore. But, you know, is where it is. So, David's got a question here. What's the current Borg experience at Google like?
Yeah, I mean, it's not really experience that we want.
Okay, so what's he talking? What's he talking about first? Define.
So Borg is basically Google version of Kubernetes. I mean, Google container orchestration and operating system for the cluster and all that stuff. Basically, think of Kubernetes as Google taking experience from Borg, which is very Google specific, and making it a bit less specific.
Yeah.
And you can notice that actually in the design. how, we spoke a couple of times about it before, that Kubernetes is designed to be for a very big scale. It's not really developer friendly compared to Docker, let's say, right? And that is part of that Google DNA, that they actually, I cannot say a clone, but it's based on Borg experience. So Borg is Google's internal Kubernetes.
Okay. So going back to his second question, isn't it a benchmark for where we want to be, where we aspire to be? Maybe?
Yes. Yes, except that, Borg is fine-tuned for Google and Google only.
Yeah.
And Kubernetes is more general, which has its advantages, but yes, the answer is yes.
Sure. The only thing Kubernetes is missing is the deployment tools. As you know, majority are using makefile to deploy. Whoa.
Oh, this is going to be a long subject.
Okay. Boy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to troll now, because this would now mean me entering into discussion about
We have 9 minutes.
Jenkins seg.
You can troll for 1 minute. Go ahead.
Yeah, but basically, it's I think it's about. I think that we as industry. I'm not going to do marketing pitch right now, but that is indeed one of the things missing. I would not say the only thing missing. So the only thing missing is a bit of an overstatement or understatement. I'm never sure about the difference. But yes, I mean, actually, I think that it's not that the only thing missing in Kubernetes is deployment tools. I think that the only thing missing in Kubernetes is everything above Kubernetes. I don't think that we have any of the things on top of Kubernetes solved yet. None of those. We are in very early stages. The only thing we know is that we have a base platform, Kubernetes, which in some future nobody will use directly, because it is designed to be a base platform, not a platform.
Correct.
And everything else is unsolved. Everything. Not only that.
Yep. Until that's solved, and it's like it's hard to start building on top of something when the innards of that something is still being under great construction as well, right?
I mean, yes and no. I think that, like, I don't know, maybe last year and a half, maybe even 2 years, there is nothing exciting coming, truly exciting coming from Kubernetes. Maybe I'm downplaying it a bit, maybe. But I think that...
But it's definitely been this.
Yes.
From a feature set. Yeah, that's okay. That's what you'd expect from a stable product.
Exactly. So it's stable. It's not changing drastically. Of course, new and cool things are coming, but they're not really groundbreaking ideas and things like that. We have a stable base now. Without diminishing the value, it will continue improving, and all those things. Don't yell at me now after saying Kubernetes is not inventing anything new. But it's about being stable right now, and it's about us, the rest of the world, building on top of it. This is the stage that we are in right now. And we are doing that. I think that almost every software vendor is doing that right now, right this very moment. Yep. Soon we will have a war. It will be very bloody.
Okay.
So, like when Kubernetes and Docker and Nomad and Mesos appeared, we understood the concept. Concept is great. Now we're clashing different vendor solutions, product, projects, whatever you want to call it. And who is going to prevail? Kubernetes won. And then it continues advancing, and now we're a stable version. Now we're all building things on top. We are still not at that much of a war, because we are still in a phase of building. But I suspect that we will stop building not long from now, and then we're going to start fighting, and there will be couple of winners. Everybody else will lose and go down the history, just as Docker Swarm went down the history and is non-existent today.
Are you saying we're getting ready to play Civ? Is my voice messed up again? Or am I clear?
And now you're not. Now you're clear but delayed. It's okay. Huh.
Oh, I am. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see that too. All right. That's fine. If at least it waits till the last 5 minutes, right? And then, oh well.
Yeah, have a hard break at top of the hour when I'm gonna leave, no matter whether you want to continue or not.
It's like, yeah, okay, I don't like it anymore. I'm going home now. So, all right. That's probably a good place to stop, right? The war is coming. So,
yes,
it's just what it is.
it's good. It's,
Yeah.
after every war comes,
we'll
I mean, wars are horrible. So don't
Yeah.
misinterpret me. But there is always a period of prosperity after wars as well. That does not justify the war. I never said that, but there is a period of prosperity after every war.
We're looking at it historically, so we're not making statements.
No,
We're not making a political statement about this.
I am not a Nazi supporter.
No. I can't believe you went there. Okay. Is that it?
Yeah, I think it
I guess
is.
that's it. Okay. That's a weird way to leave it, but I'll leave it there. So check down in the show notes below. There's some links off to the Chaos course if you haven't picked that up yet. And if you're not subscribed to the podcast, go ahead and do that. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, go ahead and click the subscribe button over there. And get the directions right. Over there and click subscribe, click that bell, do the things, whatever it is. Yeah.
I don't know.
I get turned
Somewhere.
around. It doesn't matter. Have a great weekend, everybody. Hopefully, we should see you again next week. I think everything's still lining up to where we're both available next week. So, if you got any questions throughout the week, you can leave them in the comments, or you can add them to the comments, or just join the Slack channel. I know the link to the Slack channel is down below. In fact, I can show you. Of course, you can't. I can show you the Slack channel right now. It's slack.all that stuff, but I can't easily copy and paste it into the chat. I need to do that, but it's in the links down below. So anyway, thanks everybody. Have a great start to your weekend, I hope. If you're in Australia, you're already in your weekend. How is it, by the way? We're going to go back to work, or I'm going back to work. He's
I am also going
off
back
for the day, I think.
I'll live in Europe and do US working hours.
US works. Okay. All right. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great weekend.